Hi, I'm Dean Jansen from Home Time. In this videotape, we'll take you through the steps of remodeling a bathroom. We'll show you some options that will work in several different situations, including yours.
Home Time is made possible by Chevy full-size pickup, the most dependable, longest-lasting full-size pickup on the road. At Home Time, we believe the best way to get the job done is to use the finest tools.
And the Chevy Silverado is one of our favorites. Equipped with an optional Vortex 6000 V8 engine, it generates 300 horsepower and 355 foot-pounds of torque to power you through the toughest jobs.
And with an available fourth door, you've got lots of room for all your other tools.
And friends to help you use them.
At home or on the job site.
For work or play.
It's no wonder we at Home Time count on Silverado, the truck, to get the job done.
Silverado from Chevy, the most dependable, longest-lasting trucks on the road.
Well, we're already into the beginning stages of the demolition on this bathroom project. We've taken off the millwork, and now we're removing the plumbing fixtures. Obviously, there's a lot that has to happen before you begin the actual construction. First, you need to work up a design. Then you need to line up your materials, hire any subcontractors, and be sure to get a building permit from your local building department. During demolition, you may need to turn off the water to the house by closing the main shutoff valve. Then you need to drain out the water that's still sitting in the pipes. You do this by opening up the lowest faucet in the house and opening up the highest faucet in the house. That way, the water drains out through that low faucet.
Once the water is off, you can remove any shutoff valves or cut any pipes that you need to in order to do your demolition. Now, if you do cut any pipes, you need to cap them off before you can turn the water back on.
During your demolition, you'll probably also be dealing with some electrical devices. Always test to make sure you've turned off the power before you touch anything. And if you're left with any wire ends exposed, make sure you cap them off with a wire nut before you turn the power back on. One of the most versatile tools for demolition is a reciprocating saw. Here, I'm using it to cut through the nails and screws that are holding in the door jambs.
By switching blades, you can also use a reciprocating saw to cut through wood studs and plates in order to remove entire walls.
You can also use a reciprocating saw for cutting through galvanized plumbing lines, although you may want to unscrew these at some points to make it a little easier to connect them later. While it is possible to reuse some plumbing fixtures, with cast iron bathtubs we usually end up breaking up the old one into small pieces and replacing it with a new one.
Now, one thing when you're doing a bathroom like this, when you pull out the toilet and sink, you end up removing the traps. It has a little curved part the water sits in that keeps sewer gas from backing up into the house. So with these removed, I stuffed rags in there so we don't have to worry about the sewer gases getting in. I also taped up our heat register here so we don't have to worry about debris getting into the ductwork, and put a fan in the window so we can kind of get some of this dust and debris to blow outside. Now, probably the number one thing you can do to keep a project like this from getting out of hand is to keep the plumbing fixtures in about the same spot. As soon as you start to move the tub, the toilet, or the sink, you could run into major problems rerouting pipes. Now, you may have to rip up the subfloor to do the rerouting, or go into the room below and start tearing out the ceiling. Now, the only thing we're going to do is move the sink, which was in this spot, over about 3 feet. Well, that's not that big a deal.
To reroute the drain lines, we use PVC pipe. You can cut PVC with a hacksaw.
You join the pieces together by first brushing a primer cleaner on both parts of the joint, then applying solvent to both pieces, and finally pushing the pieces together, twisting them about a quarter turn, and holding them for a few seconds.
There are many fittings available in PVC, including this threaded adapter, which we're using to join the PVC to the existing galvanized pipes. Another common way to join new drain pipes to old ones is with a no-hub style connector. This consists of a rubber sleeve that slips over the two pipes and a pair of clamps to seal the joint.
Now, the drain line was pretty simple. All we did was extend that, but there are limitations to exactly what you can do there. Now, we're working with 1.5 inch diameter pipe. That's 1.5 inch inside diameter.
Now, working with that size pipe, the maximum that we can go is 42 inches from our vent.
The vent pipes are, of course, the ones that go up. And the reason that you need these is to allow the waste to flow down the drain without sucking the water out of the traps in the various fixtures.
For water supply lines, we use type M copper pipes. Now you cut copper by spinning a tubing cutter around it, tightening it as you go.
Until it cuts it. Now I can clean off the tube. Use some emery cloth to do that. I'll get the ends nice and clean. This gets any oxidation that might be on the pipes. For the inside of the fitting, I'll use a little wire brush to do that. Now once they're cleaned, then we can flux the inside of the fitting as well as the tube. This flux is also sometimes called soldering paste. And once we have everything fluxed and clean, then what works best is to fit everything together. And once it's fit together, then we can sweat the joints.
To sweat a joint, heat it up with a MAP or propane torch until it's hot enough to melt the solder. Now you may have to test it a couple times. When it's ready, hold the solder to the side of the joint away from the flame and let the heat draw the melted solder all the way into and around the joint. Sweating takes a little bit of skill and a little patience.
When sweating connections with plastic or rubber parts in them, you want to make sure to take out the innards, like we did on the shower valve here. That way you don't run the risk of the heat from the torch melting something. It's smart to put shutoffs on the incoming hot and cold lines. Now, these lines then come up and feed into the main valve. Coming down from the valve is a pipe ending in an eared, threaded L fitting, which is screwed into wood blocking at least 4 inches above the top of the tub. A threaded pipe will screw into the L for the tub spout. Another line rises up from the valve for the shower. This threaded eared L should be at least 72 inches above the floor.
1, 2, 3. If you're installing a new tub, surround, or shower base, set it in place while the walls are still open and connect it right away to the drain line system.
This is the trap for the drain underneath the tub. This part hooks up to the drain line, and this part hooks up to the tailpiece coming down from the tub, and they both go together like that. Now, to prepare the drain line for the new tub, we had to cut back the old galvanized pipe and put on another no-hub connector like we did for the sink. Then we had to glue on an angled fitting and a trap adapter. Now the piece of the trap just goes together with nuts and washers so I don't have to do any more gluing.
We have all the drywall finished in here. Now we're putting up our concrete backer board around the tub. It's the best stuff to use behind ceramic tile. Now what this material is a 1/2-inch piece of concrete with fiberglass mesh on either side. Now to cut this stuff, you use a special blade with a carbide tip on them. You just score it, and it's like working with drywall. Once you have it scored, you snap it. And then using a razor knife, I just cut up the back of the rest of the fiberglass. Okay, now to secure this, we'll be using 1 3/4 galvanized roofing nails. Okay, that's a spot right there.
Okay. You place the nails every 6 to 8 inches along each stud. And then when you're all done, you go back and reinforce the joints with thin-set mortar and fiberglass tape. A thin-set is a special mortar that's used for setting tile, usually floor tile. It comes in a powder form, and you mix it to the consistency of, mud. Then you push it into the joint with a 6-inch drywall taping knife. Then you push the fiberglass tape into the mortar, like so. There we go. And then we use our taping knife to embed it.
The mortar needs to set up overnight. Then you can begin attaching the wall tile. For a tub surround, you install the tile by combing out a pre-mixed tile adhesive with a V-notch trowel.
Now the way this works is the adhesive is fairly sticky, and the tiles don't weigh that much, so we simply press the adhesive or the tiles onto the adhesive, and they pretty much just hang on the side of the wall. Now the way the spacing works, I don't know if you can see this or not, but there's little lugs on the edge of the tile. What I do is place one tile up against the next, and those little lugs perform the spacing function for us. So we don't have to worry about keeping the tiles apart a certain distance. Now once we get all the full tiles laid up in a section, I'll go back and measure for the ones that we have to cut. Okay, it looks like 3 1/8 ought to work.
Okay.
And once you do have a section like this laid up, go back and wipe off any excess adhesive. Now's a real good time to catch it. Also, if you have any adhesive in the cracks, pull that out with a utility knife. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to get out in those areas.
A lot of your cuts can be made on a snapper like this. It's got a little wheel that runs along the surface and scores a line in the top. And then this little lever just snaps a tile apart. There we go. Now, even though the cuts are pretty clean, it's a good idea to use a rub stone to smooth it out. There you go.
Now, whenever you're dealing with cut tile, you want to make sure that the cut side of the tile is up against the wall, not up against the side of the finished tile that you laid previous to that.
Well, once you're done setting tile, you need to apply grout to the joints. Grout for wall tile is usually pretty fine since the joints between wall tile are usually thin. You use this padded float to push it around the surface and push it down into the joints. Once you've got an area done, you hold the float at about a 90-degree angle to the wall and scrape off the surface. Make sure you scrape diagonally across the tiles so that the edge of the float doesn't dig into the joints. Then wipe it with a damp sponge. Clean off the excess grout and shake the grout in the joints. You want to be rinsing out your sponge pretty often so that you're not leaving much residue on the surface. The final wipe should be with a freshly rinsed sponge. One wipe, turn it over, one more wipe, then rinse it again. An alternative to a tile tub surround is one made of plastic or fiberglass. Here's the steps to installing one of those.
Most surrounds come in 3 or 5 pieces. The first job is cutting holes in the piece that goes over the wall with the plumbing. Now, the best way to do this is to make a template out of cardboard.
Okay.
Depending on the size of the openings you need, you can use a hole saw or a jigsaw. Use one of the adhesives recommended by the manufacturer. For this brand, we spread the adhesive out with a notched trowel just like you do with vinyl flooring or ceramic tile. It's also a good idea to put caulk along the edge of the tub before you set the panels in. For this brand, the panels for the plumbing wall and the head wall go in first. Then you trim the center panel to fit between them. On some kits, the panels will merely overlap at the corners. This brand, though, has an interlocking corner that seems like it should be pretty watertight. Nonetheless, it's recommended that you put caulk into the channel before installing the back panel.
Let me pop this out. Let's pull it out toward me a little bit. Okay, get down here.
It's a good idea to brace the panels in place overnight while the adhesive cures. Once it's dry, we'll go back and caulk the joint between the tub and the panels.
All set?
Yep.
Okay, let's lift.
All right, well, with our walls done, we're able to start installing our cabinets. Now, we're going to be putting in 3 base cabinets. Many times in a basic bathroom, you'll have one cabinet. That'll be the vanity cabinet. And that's what we're starting with here.
This vanity cabinet came with the back open, but in a lot of cases, you may have to drill holes in the back of the cabinet to fit over these pipes coming out of the wall.
And to make sure everything's level and plumb, we'll probably end up putting some shims underneath it here and along the back.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to put shims back here too.
That looks fine. So does that. Now what I'm doing is sliding shims down right along the front of the studs, along the back of the cabinet, so when we attach this cabinet, we don't pull everything off kilter. Robin's going to pre-drill them so we can screw right through the rail into the studs. In fact, the cabinet came along with special screws to do exactly that. Oops.
That one's ready?
There? Okay. Now, once you get beyond a couple of cabinets, you'll probably be dealing with filler strips. Now, what filler strips are finished pieces of lumber supplied by the cabinet company that match the cabinets. We have one right here in between our linen cabinet and the wall. It fills in the space. We also have another filler strip between this cabinet and our linen cabinet that again fills in this space. Now, the way we attach cabinet to cabinet and filler strip to cabinet is to screw into the sides.
Once the cabinets are in, you're ready for countertops. Laminate counters are very popular. They come pre-built, or you can build them yourself. Either way, installation is pretty easy. Start by putting some strips of 3/4 inch buildup on the top of the cabinets to elevate the middle and back of the counter. The underside of the front edge of the counter will probably already have buildup on it.
Okay, let me get my end up. Now we cut a little notch out of the corner of this so it'll fit around the wall. Now we do have a backsplash that will be running along the back and the side here, so it'll cover up any gaps along that. Okay, all right, now I want to just screw through our corner blocks up into the countertops. If we can, let's see, where's that corner block?
To get the backsplash to fit tightly to the wall, we use a compass to scribe the contour of the wall onto the top edge of the backsplash.
Okay, then we can remove the backsplash, and using a belt sander, we can take this right down to the line. Now this has a real thin area of buildup in this area, so it makes it a lot easier to use the belt sander to take it down to that point. Okay. Okay, so set.
And we scribed it so it fits good against the wall. Next, we're installing it by gluing it to the wall and the countertop with silicone adhesive.
Now once the backsplash is in position, we want to use some shims in between the backsplash and these cleats that we screwed up on the wall to make sure it's tight against the countertop. And then we'll use these braces to make sure that it's tight up against the wall. There. Yeah, that looks pretty good.
Well, once your countertop is in, you're ready to install the sink. Cut a hole in the counter according to the template that comes with it and start attaching the other pieces to the sink.
Now the faucet and drain assembly comes in about 10 different little packages, which is fairly typical. Now that includes the spout, the valves, the supply tube between the valves and the spout, as well as the drain assembly. Now the particular faucet we're working with is a wide set faucet. The other type is the center set. Now the center set is one where everything's in one piece and requires a sink with 3 different holes, and the holes have to be spaced 4 inches apart. With a widespread like this, the holes many times are 8 inches apart, or in the case of this faucet, it can be adjustable. None of this is connected here, so these holes really could be anywhere on the sink.
Now, the water of the house is shut off, and I cut the caps off the ends of these copper pipes coming out of the wall.
Here you go.
Great, thanks. Now the first thing I want to do is install the shutoff valve, and then I can turn the water back on. And the valve is a compression fitting. The collar goes on first, and then this little brass ring, and then the valve, and everything gets tightened down. And with the compression fitting, the ring gets tightened down into the copper pipe, which creates a watertight seal.
Well, we moved on to the drain assembly. Now this is the flange, a little bit of plumber's putty around the outside. Now this fits into the drain hole in the sink.
I take my drain tailpiece and I screw that into the bottom of the flange. I want to get that as tight as possible. Okay, there we go. Now once that is fairly tight, then I want to really secure everything, and I do that by spinning this lock nut. And I keep on doing that till it's really secure. Now the last thing on our drain assembly is the stopper. We want to take this collar and screw this into the hole in the side of our drain tailpiece. Now it's kind of tricky in connecting the handle, which I'm sliding through the top of the spout, and our lever. Now what we want to accomplish here is we want this handle to move freely. We want the stopper to move all the way up and all the way down. So we'll start with it in the fourth hole and see how that works. Let's see. Not exactly perfect. Let's move it up to the third hole, see how that works. This thing attached. Okay, we're in a complete down position, and about there. Tighten it down. Okay, yeah, that seems to be working pretty good.
Well, we're just about ready to set the sink into the countertop. I put a couple of small beads of silicone adhesive around the edge of the opening. And the rim of the sink will sit right on top of that and glue it into place.
Okay, all set.
Yep.
There we go.
There you go.
Okay, well, we didn't cut the hole too big. That's good. Hooking up these flexible supply tubes is fairly straightforward. You just want to tighten them just a little bit past hand tighten. There we go.
For the drain connections, you need to have a trap. That's what this is. One end of it slides onto the drain tailpiece coming down from the sink. Need that?
Yeah.
For the tailpiece, you can shorten it by cutting it, or you can lengthen it by replacing it or adding an extension to it. The layout for our sink and pipes meant that we had to lengthen the tailpiece and shorten the trap. There we go.
Okay, I'll take the trap and slide up the tailpiece and get it at approximately the right height. Take the other part of the strap and slide that into the pipe that we originally roughed in to the wall here. Now this had a threaded trap adapter we glued onto it. And this is how we'll make the connection of the trap to the wall. We'll leave that a little loose. And we'll swivel our pivoting joint on the trap over, get those on top of each other where they should go. This gives us, the swivel here gives us a little bit of flexibility on lining everything up. Now the trap and the tailpiece and even the trap adapter can all be white PVC like we've got here, or black ABS, plastic or coil. This PVC is probably going to be the easiest to work with and also your least expensive alternative. Okay, let's give that a try.
When you turn on a new faucet for the first time, take the screen off the end of the spout and let the water run for a couple of minutes. This is to flush out any debris in the lines.
Okay, the water's on.
Okay. There you go. How's it doing?
It looks pretty good. Don't see anything leaking.
So far, so good.
Yeah.
A laminate countertop with a self-rimming sink is just one of several options you have for a bathroom sink. A very common choice is to go with a cultured marble countertop with an integral bowl. When you install one of these, you attach the faucet and the drain assembly first. Usually it just takes a couple of dabs of silicone adhesive to hold these in place to the top of the vanity cabinet. Cultured marble tops come in a variety of shapes, sizes, and colors. They're molded from a plaster-type material and finished with a hard glaze, although this one has a nice matte finish. Now it's difficult to shape a cultured marble top to fit the surrounding walls. Usually you just run a bead of caulk around the edges.
Another option for the sink in the bathroom is to install a pedestal sink. A pedestal sink is partially supported by a pedestal that sits on the floor, but it's also partially supported with a bracket or double-sided bolts on the wall. So it's helpful to install wooden blocking in the wall behind the sink early in the construction. This way, there will be something solid to secure the bracket or the bolts into. Since the plumbing connections for a pedestal sink are visible, we try to use attractive fittings: brass or chrome-plated shutoff valves, supply lines, and trap. A metal trap assembly will usually include an escutcheon to cover where the drain pipe comes out of the wall. Now to install the toilet, I put the flange bolts on the flange already, and I'm putting a wax ring over the horn. Set this thing on the top and then press it in real well so I can flip the toilet right side up. We're all ready for installation.
Now setting the toilet onto the flange is a little awkward. It's kind of hit or miss trying to line up those bolts exactly.
Okay, now that I have this over the flange bolts, I want to put some weight on it. Now, you don't want to rock it back and forth. You just want to get everything sealed in and check for level. Okay, now that everything's level, I can go ahead and put the nuts on the flange bolts. Alright, so first we get this little guy down, then the washer, and our nut over the top. Hand tighten this down a little ways, get everything all kind of lined up on top. Okay. You want to be real careful with this. You can over tighten these and end up cracking the toilet, so easy does it. That should do it. Okay, we're ready to attach the tank now to the top of the bowl. This black gasket is the thing that will provide the watertight seal between the tank and the bowl. The way we'll attach this is with these 3 bolts coming out the bottom of the tank. Excuse me, I'm throbbing. So I'll set this on top of the toilet and we'll screw it right down through. Those lined up. And again, this is another one of these things you don't want to tighten down too hard. Get that thing attached. There we go. Okay, I got the new supply light on. Now we can test it out.
As a final touch for your bathroom, you'll need to apply caulk in several places: between the floor and the toilet, between the floor and the tub, and between the tub and the tile. Use masking tape to keep excess caulk off the finished surfaces as you smooth the caulk down.
Silicone sealant works well to glue accessories to tile and to wallboard. You can use thick double-stick tape on the back to hold them in place while the silicone sets up, or you can use masking tape on the front.
Now you can see that we've got the medicine cabinet in. It's a surface mount cabinet. Now if you decide to go with a recessed one that fits into the wall, then you're going to have to put an opening in the framing like you would a window. And that's kind of hard to do. Anyway, we decided it wasn't worth it. And sometimes people attach the incoming power cable directly to the light fixture using a cable connector, but we've been told it's best to use a junction box. So I'm just pulling the leads through the hole, and then I'll screw the plate to the junction box using these screws, and then I'll screw it down to our wooden box. Well, I wrapped the ground wire around the screw on the back plate. Right now I'm just hooking up the hot wires coming out of the fixture with the hot wires coming out of the wall. That's the black wires, and then I'll do the same thing with the white wires, which are the neutral wires. There we go. Okay, now that all the connections are made, I'll just get these wires out of the way and then put this front plate back on. So, there we go. And that's held in place by these collar nuts. There we go. Right now I'm wiring up the outlets and switches. Building codes say that any outlet adjacent to the sink must be a ground fault circuit interrupt outlet, and they call it a GFCI. You'll find these in areas of the home where there's moisture. A GFCI gives you extra protection against shock. And these are wired up in a very specific way. The incoming power gets connected to the line terminals. That's these right here, it's marked line. And then there's these load terminals. Anything that gets hooked up to that also gets GFCI protection. So I'm hooking up the cable that goes to the outlet on the other side of the sink to the load side. So this is the GFCI installed. You need to test these once a month. That's what these two little buttons are for. Test and reset. And you can see that these lights are hooked up to the GFCI. The lighting above the sink is pretty important. Most people tend to agree that what you need is a soft, even incandescent light around the mirror. You don't want a fluorescent light because the color can be misleading. And you don't want a recessed light above the sink because that can cast a shadow over your face. What you need is either a light bar or a group of lights on either side of the mirror or above the mirror.
All right, well, we had the exhaust fan installed. It's a real quiet one, and it operates at 1.5 sones.
I'll turn it on so you can hear it. Now this is a little pilot light on the switch so you can see it whether it's on or off. Now it also has an overhead light and a night light which operates at 5 watts. Now another thing you want to be concerned about fans is how much air they can move. You want a fan that can turn over the air in this space 8 times per hour. Now this one operates at 110 cubic feet per minute, so that means it can turn over the air in this space about 12 times per hour, which is pretty good.
Well, that's about it. Obviously, what we've done in here isn't going to answer all your questions about bathroom remodeling, but hopefully we've given you some good basics and some good design ideas.
Thanks for watching.
See you next time.